Good evening. Forgive me if I sound a little off, I'm just getting over a cold. So, tonight's presentation, I wanted to talk to you guys about Sasquatch and fire and tool use, or the lack thereof. Now, we'll preface this by saying that Sasquatch very well could use fire. They might be very adept at making it, and under certain circumstances, they might know what it is or how to control it or how to put it out at the very least, because fire does occur in nature through lightning strikes and different volcanic activity and things, and they're probably used to humans and campfires because they've been around us for thousands of years. But I never ever hear reports of them using campfires. I've heard reports of them making fire rings with unburned firewood in it, and I've heard of them running from forest fires, but I've never heard an example of Sasquatch building a fire. And this seems kind of odd to me, because you think living out in the woods, maybe compromised food sources, living in cold climates. Now, there are reports of Bigfoots being in really, really cold climates, in the snow, below zero freezing, and having no problem. They must have a metabolism like a hummingbird or something like that, where they're just burning off the calories just to stay that warm, and probably have a good layer of fat, and some of those regions probably have a good layer of fur on them as well, or hair, however you want to describe it. But you don't really hear too many encounters, if at all, of them using fire. Maybe it draws too much attention. Now, I've heard things, if you really want to get out there, that these creatures are forbidden to use fire. Or maybe it's just not in a rule book, or maybe it's just in a technology that they don't understand or use, or they've adapted well enough to eat things that don't need to be cooked, and they're robust enough to where they don't have to cook their food. So yeah, the fire use thing was always really fascinating to me. How you never hear stories of people coming across a family using fire, or Sasquatch manipulating fire, or poking around a fire stick, or any of that other kind of stuff. When going back to ancient humans, even past Neanderthals, even to like Homo habilis, Homo erectus, like our very early human ancestors, we figured out how to use clubs and sticks and make Clovis type points and things like that. We mastered fire like millions of years ago, when we were very primitive, when we were, the different types of hominin and hominid species out there. We mastered fire pretty early on. Now, as far as tool use, we do get some reports of Bigfoot using tools, like when they tree knock, that's obviously with a stick. Some people say tree knocking is maybe them clapping really loud. But there are stories of them throwing rocks, or using rocks to break open something, or throwing rocks through windows, or using clubs and sticks in a hunting behavior I've heard of, but I've never heard of them fashioning a tool or using a tool in an advanced area. Now, I've heard of them being very clever, like if there's a motion sensor light, they'll put a stick on the ground right to where that motion sensor activates, so they can move through a yard or something and not set it off. And I guess that would be manipulation of the environment, which is essentially tool use. But you don't ever hear of them, fashioning a spear. Like I said, you kind of hear them using sticks sometimes, or throwing rocks, like a very simple club, but you never hear advanced tool use. And going back, that was one of the very first things that our ancient ancestors, our predecessors, the different species that evolved and died out before we came along, very early on, figured out how to use stone tools, how to sharpen them, how to use them for cutting, how to use them for breaking bones. That was one of the theories of how we started to eat protein and grew our bigger brains, is that we were able to crack open animal bones and eat the marrow and that kind of stuff. And even very primitive, the great ape species, gorillas, orangutans, chimpanzees, are pretty much in the Stone Age. They can use simple stone tools, they can use sticks, they can use different things to manipulate the environment. It's been well documented. In the last few years, they've actually got footage of chimpanzees using rocks to crack open things and break open things. And it's not just in great ape species either, like otters and other animals, and even crows and things will use rocks and tools, and more clever species figure out how to manipulate their environment. What we don't see from a chimpanzee, though, is advanced stone tool making. Like you don't see one, fashioning a point or a spear tip or something like that. Uh, you know, when they're put in artificial human environments, chimpanzees and great apes they can work doorknobs, they can use computer screens, they can use light switches, they can interact with human-based stuff, but you don't really see them creating advanced technology or even advanced Stone Age technology, much less using fire, obviously. That's pretty far advanced for a chimpanzee. But for Sasquatch, though, it's always one of those, like, they're incredibly clever, they have a form of language, they may or may not be close enough to interbreed with us. They are the masters of their environment. They've been shown to open doorknobs. They've been shown to open chicken coops. They've been shown to do many different types of things that require a lot of dexterity and understanding. But we do get Sasquatch making stick structures, which is a bit more of an advanced tool making or form making than, say, like some of the simple gorilla type beds and nests. I mean, birds make nests. But they actually make stick structures, they make huts, reportedly, they make blinds, which is a bit more advanced than just about any other species other than maybe like the great apes, and even more advanced than them. But yeah, like I was saying, Sasquatch really, there's lots of reports of them opening barn doors, latching and unlatching barn doors, understanding how hinges work and things swing out, understanding what cars are and how they roll and move, and when they start up they're going to move, obviously through observation. There's many stories of the classic one, like I alluded to earlier, of opening chicken coops or hog pens and stealing a hog. Like if a fox got in and ate all your chickens, there'd be feathers and blood and stuff everywhere. But you had 4 chickens, and then the night goes by and you have 3 chickens in the morning and the other one's vanished. And then the next day there's 2 chickens, and then the next day there's 1 chicken, but the door is being latched. It's something with hands, it's something with fingers. It's not a fox or a coyote or a bear or something. It's either a human or something with thumbs that can manipulate the environment. There's also reported people who have really remote horse ranches where Sasquatch will braid the manes on the horses and tails, as extreme as that sounds, and that's showing great dexterity. In order to braid hair. I mean, I have a daughter. I have a hard time braiding hair myself. So to have that kind of detail and dexterity and that kind of motor skills is actually quite impressive. So there are some reports out there of them using primitive tools. I've never really heard any reports about them using fire. Please let me know what you think in the comments about what you think Sasquatch, and especially maybe even some of the different varieties. Are they familiar with fire? Do they know what it is, but they don't use it? Do they use tools? Do they have more advanced tools and they just don't use them? Or they're just big and strong enough to where they don't need a lot of tools. They rely more on brute strength and maybe have a robust enough immune system and build to where they don't need to cook their food and heat themselves. Anyway, let me know what you think, folks. Stay safe in the woods. I just wanted to share these thoughts with you. Good night.